What's good, YouTube? In today's video, we're going to be doing a deck list review for the Sliver Swarm Commander deck. Listen everybody, this is supposed to be Commander Masters, which means that these decks cost upwards of $140 on some websites to buy, so we would have to imagine that this deck here has to be worth that price. Also, just keep in mind that these reviews are for people that are brand new to Magic the Gathering, so if you have experience playing the game, I would just recommend clicking on the link below for the deck list and you can just review it yourself. The commander for this deck is the Sliver Gravemother. The Sliver Gravemother says the legend rule doesn't apply to slivers you control. I would assume that because it says the legend rule doesn't apply to slivers we control, that there should be a good amount of legendary slivers inside this deck. Each sliver creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. For those of you who don't know what Encore is, Encore essentially says that you exile this card from your graveyard, and for each opponent you're going to create a token copy that's attacking that opponent this turn if able. Those creatures gain haste. At the beginning of your end step, you're going to sacrifice those creatures. The Sliver Gravemother is kind of going two ways, where you have this Encore ability and then this Legendary Matters type ability, so we're gonna see where this Precon goes. First creature we have here is a Gale Rider Sliver. Slivers you control have flying for 1 blue. Flying wins games in the right situation. I will say that what you're gonna notice here, new players, is that slivers are just creatures that buff one another. So I'm just gonna be reading buffs over and over again for the foreseeable future. So we have the Striking Sliver. This is going to give first strike. Okay. Clot Sliver. Each sliver gains, you pay 2 mana to regenerate this creature. That's a good card. We have the Cloud Shredder Sliver. Slivers you control have flying and haste, so more flying. This one has haste though, which is pretty cool. We have a Crypt Sliver. All slivers have, you can tap to regenerate target sliver. Cool. We have a Crystalline Sliver. Slivers cannot be the target of spells or abilities. Okay. Diffusion Sliver. We have not seen one legendary sliver so far. Well, I don't think we'd find legendary slivers at this mana value anyway. We have a Diffusion Sliver. Whenever sliver you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability. Okay, so far what we're noticing is flying. We're noticing ways to keep them alive, and then we're also noticing hexproof like effects, which is pretty cool because it means your creatures are going to be really safe. We have a Gemhide Sliver, which is going to make your slivers tap for mana, essentially. It's a good card. We have a Hatchery Sliver here. Yeah, we just typed in Hatchery Sliver and we found a chicken, so give me a second. Thank you, Reddit. We have Hatchery Sliver. You can replicate. Each sliver spell you cast has replicate. The replicate cost is equal to its mana cost. So essentially, that just allows you to play a lot of slivers. I think in the video where I was doing my predictions, I predicted that there was going to be a legendary creature that had an ability similar to this. Not as mana intensive as this creature is, however, it's still a pretty good ability. Hibernation Sliver. Each sliver gains pay 2 life, return this creature to its owner's hand. Okay, more ways to protect your slivers. Mana Weft Sliver, more ways to... Guys, this deck seems really good. So far, like, the abilities seem very focused, where it's either gaining you mana, it's either protecting your slivers, or giving them flying so they can deal damage, which is cool. Quick Sliver. You can play slivers at instant speed. Alright. Sentinel Sliver. Vigilance. Vigilance, low-key amazing. Sinew Sliver. All sliver creatures get +1/+1. Okay. All slivers have Menace. Okay. Creatures you control have Death Touch. Okay, this would be good if we had slivers that have Trample or give Trample. Wing Sliver, so more slivers with flying. Blade Sliver, all slivers get +1/+0. Okay, Blur Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have haste. We have a Fire Wake Sliver. Sliver creatures have haste. You can sacrifice them to buff creatures, essentially. Harmonic Sliver. Ooh. All slivers have, when this permanent enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. That's nice, especially when we have 43 slivers in our deck. Hollow Head Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have tap to discard a card to draw a card. And when we're encoring creatures out of the graveyard back onto the battlefield, I mean, it's like the graveyard becomes a part of your hand with your commander. We have a Lava Belly Sliver. When slivers enter the battlefield, it's going to deal 1 damage to target player and you gain 1 life. Okay, Slivers have, you can pay 3 mana, sacrifices permanent, destroy target permanent. Okay, look at the mana value for these creatures, guys. We're almost like more than 10 creatures in, and we just got to 3 mana Slivers. All these are 2 mana, 2 drops, 1 drops, 3 drops. It's nice. So Realm Walker. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells of the chosen type at the top of your library. Okay, just like some card advantage. Spiteful Sliver says that Slivers have, whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. Okay. Siphon Sliver, they have Lifelink. That art is amazing, guys. That art looks super cool. We have a Bone Scythe Sliver. Slivers you control have Death Strike. Death Strike. That's an interesting ability. Double Strike. This is gonna win some games. We have a Bone Splitter Sliver, +2/+0. Capricious Sliver says Sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Nice, guys. This is decent card advantage, and depending on the amount of Slivers you have on the battlefield, you could mill yourself out of the game. Cleaving Sliver creatures you control get +2/+0. Okay, Lazotep Sliver. Oh, it's interesting. Oh, this is so cool, dude. Sliver creatures you control have Afflict 2. Afflict 2 means whenever a creature with Afflict 2 becomes blocked, the defending player loses 2 life. Whenever a non-token Sliver you control dies, amass Slivers 2. So you're gonna create an army token that's just gonna continuously gain +1/+1 counters. You're just gonna get 1 really buff Sliver. That's a cool card. I mean, I don't think his card's amazing. It's not gonna win you games. In the long run, it may, but it's just a flavorful card. I think it's just super funny to see that. We got Regal Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, Slivers you control get +1/+1 until the end of turn if you're the Monarch. Otherwise, you become the Monarch. So again, Monarch and Slivers. First of all, the art on this card, man. This is a nice looking card. Monarch and Slivers. I mean, you're gonna be able to draw cards, and you get to buff your creatures. It's cool. It's a cool card. Shifting Sliver. Slivers can't be blocked except by Slivers, so unblockable essentially. That's a good card. It's a $4 card there. Dude, this is such a cool card. Daunting Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, gold target creature and opponent controls. Fantastic card. I really like the art on this card. This is a potential tattoo. This is a cool card. We got a Brood Sliver. Whenever Sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may create a 1/1 colorless Sliver creature token. Might Sliver, all Sliver creatures get +2/+2. Okay. This one looks like a legendary creature. So Rookmarl Biologist is, as Rookmarl Biologist enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Slivers you control and non-token creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other creature types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. You can pay 3 mana and tap this to create a 1/1 Sliver. Listen, if you're an experienced player watching this, I would suggest that you go in the comments and come up with a way to make this commander work. Right now, what I would do with this commander kind of escapes me, but just write it in a way that's easy to understand so that the new players have an idea of what you're talking about. Thank you in advance. Sliver Hivelord, the first legendary Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have indestructible. What I'm thinking so far is that this deck, you just want to get the Hivelord onto the battlefield, give your Slivers indestructible, wipe the board, and then that's how you're going to win the game. Generally, when you're playing against Slivers, they just get this guy onto the battlefield, and then you wipe the board, and then you win. That's how I always lose to Slivers that way. I've never lost to Slivers any other way. Synapse Sliver. Whenever Sliver does combat damage to player, its controller may draw a card. This is cool. That's a good card. That's a $20 card. Wow. Constricting Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature and opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield. So it's like removal. 6 mana. That could change the entire course of the game. Megantic Sliver. Slivers you control get +3/+3. Nice. The Titan of Littjara. Oh, this card is gonna look so cool. I already know. Oh, what is this, dude? Illusion creature. 6 mana, 6/6. As Titan of Littjara enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Slivers. Titan of Litjara is a chosen type in addition to its other types. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may draw a card for each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. If you do, discard a card. So this is just a gigantic draw engine, and not to mention, like, you guys see this as this, but because this is a sliver, you notice how all the slivers buff all the other slivers. So this is just a giant sliver that's gonna draw you, what, at minimum 2 cards as it attacks, and you're gonna end up discarding a card. Most likely this thing's gonna have hexproof too. This is a bomb inside this deck. Like, this card by itself is gonna win people games. This is a fun card, but I think it's only really good inside this deck. Farseek, cool, put some lands into play. Nature's Lore, it's gonna be really important. 3 visits, really important. Cultivate, yeah, you're gonna have to do that. There are 43 creatures inside this deck, so it seems like something that would be important. We have For the Ancestors, new card. Let's take a look at this. For the Ancestors, choose a creature type, instant speed. You may look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of cards of the chosen type from among them and put them into your hand, as long as you reveal them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is just gonna fill your hand for 3 mana. This is not bad. This is something you want to play in response to a board wipe, or you want to play this after a board wipe, just to help to, you know, put cards back into your hand. And if somebody discards this card, it does have flashback. For 1 more mana, you get to do this again. This can really keep your engine going, but just keep this after somebody wipes the board. I feel like that's when this card's gonna work really well. We have Harsh Mercy. Each player chooses creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of a chosen type chosen this way. It can't be regenerated. That's actually a good card for 3 mana to wipe the board like that. That's pretty awesome. Windfall. Yeah, you want to put cards into your graveyard so you can encore them out. It seems like a really good card inside this deck. We have Crippling Fear, another one-sided board wipe. Dude, you guys don't even need to play board wipes like this. Just play regular board wipes, because you're just going to play the sliver that gives all your slivers indestructible, and then just wipe the board. And they're indestructible, it doesn't even matter. But this is like them nudging you in that direction to let you know, like, hey, you should be just wiping the board and then keeping all your creatures alive. That's like the strongest play you can generally do with slivers. We have Decimate, destroy target artifact, creature, enchantment, and land. Okay. Distant Melody, you're gonna draw a card for each sliver you control with this card. Cleansing Nova, destroy all creatures. Yeah, like this. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments if you need to, but this is just one of those. This is a one-sided board wipe, even though it doesn't say it is. So we got a Soul Ring, classic, keep that card in the deck. New players, Arcane Signet, cool. Felwar Stone, great. Pillar of Origins, you can add 1 mana of any color. You can only spend that mana to cast a creature of the chosen type. Okay. Herald's Horn, you always play that in tribal decks. Icon of Ancestry, it's gonna help you look for creatures. Decent card in a slow meta. Vanquisher's Banner, you know, it's gonna buff your slivers by 1, and then as you cast a sliver, you get to draw a card, which is good. Descendant's Fury. Oh, dude. The art on this card, man. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice 1 of them. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type with a sacrificed creature. Put that card onto the battlefield and rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Cool. So remember, like, we're encoring, so we're gonna have to sacrifice our slivers anyway because they're tokens, and because you're gonna have to sacrifice them, that triggers this card just to sacrifice the thing that was already gonna be sacrificed, and then you get a creature onto the battlefield from that card. For 4 mana, this is a fantastic card, not only just in the sliver deck, but imagine this in a dragon deck. Just to look at the top of your library and just to put a dragon into play. Dragons cost like 7, 8 mana. This is a pretty powerful card here. I'm gonna want many copies of Descendant's Fury. When we look at the lands, in a 5-color deck, this tends to be pretty important here. What we're gonna look for is just to see how many dual lands that they have inside this deck, or lands that tap for more than 1 color, and so far we see a good amount here. 3 forests. Enters the battlefield tapped. It's unfortunate. Enters the battlefield tapped. Okay. Island, Jungle Shrine enters tapped. This enters tapped. This enters tapped. Enters tapped. You would think in a Masters type deck that they may put lands inside here that would be different to the lands that we'd see in regular precons. But you know, you can't pick and choose. You just be grateful that we get to play this in general, or just to have this deck. Sandstep Citadel, okay, Savage Lands, enters tapped, enters tapped, enters tapped. Okay, so the mana base is definitely slow. Like if you're someone that, I would imagine if you have the money to spend on this commander deck, you probably have enough money to upgrade the mana base, because you may want to upgrade the mana base because a lot of these lands enter the battlefield tapped, which in high-powered metas can lose you games. You know, in the end, I'm kind of surprised. I thought I was going to see a lot more legendary creatures, but, you know, I think you would have to go out yourself and buy your own legendary creatures. And new players, keep in mind that if you want to upgrade this commander deck, you can head over to TCG Player and buy Chinese copies or Japanese copies of the legendary slivers, and you can buy them at a fraction of the cost of what they'd normally be. So just a quick way to save money. However, with this deck, if I had to give it a rating out of 10, you know, I have to give it a 9. I think that from a beginner's perspective, I think that, you know, Slivers is one of those things where it's just one of the coolest tribes in Magic in general. Do I think that, you know, I've seen some of these decks go for almost $140 online. Do I think that this deck is really worth $140? You know, maybe because of the hype it is, and maybe because people just like slivers that much it is. And if you're one of those people, like, I'll tell you, go spend $160, spend $200 if you want, you know, if you really want it. I just think that if I could buy this at regular price, I think that the original price of this deck being, you know, I think they were either $79 or $70 each, one or the other. At that price, I see that these decks being worth the price. You know, one powerful thing that you can do with this deck that I think I didn't mention was the Encore ability. And the Encore ability costs the mana value of the creature that it is, if that makes sense. So in other words, like if all your slivers have flying, you know, and you have a couple of these slivers in the graveyard, because you can do this multiple times per turn, that are gonna buff your slivers by 1, right? Or I know we had the sliver over here that buffed them by 3. You know, you're gonna get 3 copies generally of this card entering the battlefield. So for 6 mana, you're buffing all of your potentially flying hexproof slivers. This dude by himself enters the battlefield with haste. So you're potentially buffing all your creatures by 9 for 6 mana, you know, with unblockable flying damage essentially. So this deck, don't get it twisted. You might see a lot of people like speaking in a certain way about this deck. I think that this is slivers, dude. And if you have any cards to upgrade this deck, you could turn this deck into something that's incredibly powerful. And I'm pleased, and I'm looking forward to getting my copy, because I already pre-ordered all the commander decks a long time ago. So I'm looking forward to playing this deck in the future, okay? So if you like this video and you like reviews like this, you can subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be reviewing every single Commander Masters commander deck, and I hope you look forward to watching those videos in the future, okay? Always remember, eat healthy, okay? Work out every single day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and most importantly, you guys got to remember to believe in yourself, all right? Peace out, people.